like to formally welcome everyone to today's webinar. And today we're looking at call monitoring strategies. So certainly it's had one of our highest registrations that we've had recently. And we've got lots of people dialed into the chat room already. So I'd like to introduce to you our speakers. First of all, I'm delighted to be joined by Dave Salisbury. Dave is an operations and customer relations specialist. So Dave, you've also been doing consultancy. You've written quite a large number of articles for Call Center. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks. Dave Salisbury. I am DNC Consulting. I've been running different call centers. I built a call center for a nonprofit. I've been an agent on some W-2 and W-9 work. One of my passions is, what does call center operations look like, and what do we do to improve the people in those call center operations? So most of my focus is actually, what do we take a look at for the people side of things? And my PhD dissertation is also working into that, really looking to see how we can improve the people of today to meet the operations that we're going to have tomorrow.
Wonderful. So I'm also delighted to be joined back by Ed Creasy from Nice Systems. Ed, welcome.
Yeah, great to be here. And I think I'd like to represent the dinosaurs in the contact center industry today. You know, I'm here as someone who remembers those times before quality. So I was an agent back in 1992. I saw the whole evolution of technology in the contact center in the 90s, and then since 1999, I've been using quality evaluation, consulting techniques, and speech analytics and text analytics, and now the whole portfolio of contact center capabilities at NICE. So great to be here and talk about technology.
Excellent. So two great speakers. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. Just a reminder, if you'd like to watch a replay of today, share this with your management team. That will be available later on this afternoon, callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. If you're not already logged into the chat room, I see we've got 63 people already into the chat room. So we've probably got about another 100 that aren't in there already. So if you'd like to go to callcenterhelper.com/chat, and if you'd like to log into the chat room there, just put in your first name, last name, and email address. And it does come up in a separate window. So if your screen's big enough, just put the chat room to one side, the webinar slides to the other side, and then you can do the same side by side. You can download the webinar slides. You can do that from within the chat room. You just see this link on the top right-hand side, and you can get a copy of Ed's and of Dave's slides through there. So the added advantage being logged in. You can also ask tips, questions, or opinions. If you have a tip, here is we've got a bottle of champagne for the best tip, which I will pick at the end of the call. Obviously, if you prefer a box of chocolates, we can ship that. Or if you prefer an Amazon gift card, we can ship that out as well. So we'll be picking that at the end. If you just like to use in the chat room, hashtag tip if you're putting in a tip, or hashtag question, so we can track that going through. We're also running some polling software. So what I want to do is I'd like to ask a poll. This is in your GoToWebinar box. And the question I'd like to ask is, why do you monitor calls? So I'd just like to vote on this. Do you monitor calls to generate quality scores? Do you do it to change advisor behaviors? Do you do it to provide a more positive feedback to advisors? Do you do it to discover compliance issues, discover customer issues, or for compliance reasons? Perhaps if you pick the top two on that list, so pick the top two ones going through there. Dave, do you think which value do you think is going to be most popular?
I would probably think changing advisor behaviors. But definitely compliance is always a risk management issue, and call monitoring certainly feeds both of those, very complementary.
Okay, well, let's have a look at what the results show. And it's certainly a surprise to me, because actually only 45% of the audience say to generate quality scores. But the most common one there, indeed, Dave, is to change advisor behaviors. The next one down is to discover customer issues. Then it is to provide positive feedback to advisors, which is great. And then compliance comes in just under half the audience. And actually generating quality scores is the lowest of them all. So I think a very positive result overall of how people are using it. So it's probably the time now to pass the baton across to Dave Salisbury. And Dave, if you'd like to put the slides up on your screen and share with us your thoughts about call quality monitoring. So we can
absolutely.
Just may need to go to the first slide.
Sorry about that. So I guess the first one that we really want to make sure that we understand is what is the role of call monitoring? How the organization, how your business, how your call center approaches this question and answers this question is going to determine a host of connected issues. Call monitoring is like the ultimate spider. It's going to have a huge web, and right in the center is going to be call monitoring, and it's going to spread its arms out. But at the best, at the end of the day, call monitoring is only a tool. You know, it is that hammer that will build or destroy. And I understand there's lots of different manual processes, and there's a love-hate relationship with some of them. But it really is just this tool, and understanding the scope of this tool will improve so much in your call center. We also want to talk about the purpose of the call monitoring. One of the biggest ones that we're going to find here is that when we know the purpose, we're going to be able to detail a strategy. When we have that strategy, we'll then be able to plan tactical actions and tactical activities feeding that strategy. Again, this is where we get into that point where we want to push everything down to the lowest level where it's going to have a positive effect. So information, maybe there's some strategic stuff that only the managers get, but you want to make sure the team leaders are advised of it. Same thing for the agents. Some of the strategy stuff the agents don't need to know, but all of the tactical stuff you will definitely want that agent to know. And the first strategy in call monitoring is to define the role and purpose of call monitoring. I mean, we've got to know that one. Absolutely, for sure. And call monitoring, just like any hammer, it's either going to build or destroy. Call monitoring is either a gotcha or an aha. It is never both. We've got a poll here.
Yeah, we've got a poll, and what I want to do is ask a poll question, which is what behaviors do you want to change through call monitoring? So if you wanted to perhaps pick the first two, so it was certainly the top vote from last time. So if you want to pick the top two, problem solving, accuracy, empathy, politeness, or compliance. So what are the behaviors that you'd most want to change through call monitoring? If there's an answer that you have that's not on this list, if you'd like to add that into the chat room, and if you're not in the chat room, it's callcenterhelper.com/chat. So if you'd just like to vote on that, I think we've got most of the people voted there. So I'm just going to share the answers on the screen here. The sample size for this is 195. 59% of people have said accuracy, 56% to improve problem solving, 45% compliance, 44% empathy, and politeness is pretty well at the back of the list there. Presumably all the staff are already polite. So Dave, any surprises on that list?
I'm kind of surprised at the politeness side of things. Not so much because the agents are being impolite, but the fact that it's not as stressed. That behavior of saying please and thank you and you're welcome. More often than not in our current society, we're not seeing you're welcome coming back when somebody thanks you. And that's been noted by several major researchers that's come out through several call centers where we've had this conversation. Do you actually hear you're welcome when a customer says thank you as part of that politeness? So the basics in politeness, that is surprising to me.
Indeed, and we've got a few other answers that have come through. Geraldine has said kindness, which I think is quite an interesting one. Tabitha has said critical thinking, and Justina has said confidence for our agents is the other behaviour. Confidence is one that we've not talked through, but I think is certainly quite key. So Dave, I think some good answers there.
Yes, and I would absolutely agree with the confidence side of things. That is a major driver to all of those behaviors we were just discussing. If that agent is not internally confident because they have practiced, because they know what they're talking about, because they've been provided the why, and because they've been delivered the tools necessary to quickly address whatever problem is come in from that customer, they're not going to be confident. So definitely confidence is one of those key aspect behaviors that we will want to see in agents.
And just one thing that's interesting on tools around confidence, we've done a lot of analysis of the silent time in interactions. And one thing we found, it was very interesting, it was a process that took 18 minutes, and of which 15 minutes was silence. And this customer had a real problem with repeat calls. And we, in this case, we deployed an automation tool that automated that 15 minutes, and then the process took 3 minutes, right? But what was interesting was the repeat call rate was high simply because the customers didn't trust the outcome because of the level of silence. So it's often not the agents themselves, it's the tools they've got available to them to give us, as consumers, that feeling of we don't really trust the answer here.
Absolutely, and one of the worst things that you'll find is agents being blamed for a repetitive call. That is totally outside of the agent's control. And if the customer is not confident with that, they're going to call back. If they didn't like the agent, they're going to call back. There's nothing that agent can control in repetitive call. The best they can do is provide the best they have and proceed confidently based upon what they have. So yes, it does come back to those tools. That is a huge issue with being able to get, like, say, the intranet, your computer system to run fast enough so it's delivering that data to that agent so they can deliver it to the customer. These mechanics of an agent's call center, or an agent in a call center rather, that's where your confidence level is going to build.
Yeah, and this is why quality must never die, because no matter what your sample size, if you're using voice of the customer, you could get up to 30–40% of your interactions. You may have noticed that sometimes customers are slightly irrational and they blame the agent they're evaluating based on their feeling about the brand, let alone their previous interaction. And that's why this emotional acuity we have when we assess interactions is so important.
Absolutely. And customer choice comes in as that other side of it. They can't be disregarded.
Indeed. Dave, I think you've got something on gotcha moments you're going to talk about.
Yes. So when we talk about call monitoring, gotchas are where the call monitoring is used to punish the agents. Again, we're getting back into that confidence level where, if the tools aren't there, or on-the-job training is insufficient, the call monitoring is used to play gotcha. The next thing you know, that employee is written up and they're headed out the door, which means you're going to be losing people, increased churn. There's going to be a lot of problems in the call center. One of the biggest parts to the gotchas is the call scripting, buzzwords, power adjectives, call them whatever you want. But if you are specifically looking for words used by an agent, you've got gotchas. And those are really hard to get around because the agents are going to speak as they understand. They're going to speak as they're confident. They're also going to speak as they have been educated. So, using some of those call scriptings where you want to mandate that you know, this happens every single time X is presented, it just makes call monitoring so much more difficult. On the other side of it, we've got the aha. If your call monitoring is built as the hammer to build, you're going to be improving agent performance. You're going to be seeing an extension of your customer service mission in your call center agents, because they're getting that feedback, they're getting those tools, allowing them to grow and perform on a professional manner. I've yet to meet an agent who does not want to be a professional. So it's definitely that a tool to be using. Now we get into the call monitoring mission, and this is separate from customer service, but it feeds the customer service mission. And we want to stress again, call monitoring is reviewing behaviors. It's not just words used because the agent representative was told to use them. You know, call monitoring strategies are an extension of the role and the purpose of the call center. They're an extension of the organizational mission statement and customer service purpose and reasons. And it will define customer service for the entire organization. That cannot be stressed enough. And then we get into some tools used in call monitoring, and my favorite here is ghosting. Some of you might know it, some of you might not. One of my first call centers used it very effectively. It's where a senior representative is coaching a new representative, but they're not side by side. This agent is coming in on one channel where the senior agent is able to hear both the agent and the customer, and is able to make recommendations and comments into the other side into the other ear for the new agent so that they can improve their performance. It is a great tool. I wish I could see more of that in some call centers. But we also have call reviews where, you know, you've got individual review, you've got team review, you've got peer-to-peer review, etc. You've got online and offline evaluations of calls where you have real-time quality assurance coming in and saying, hey, you know, I heard your call online. Let me talk to you about what happened during that call that I heard. You've also got the offline, and a lot of people are familiar with the offlines because that's where the manual processes really come into play. I'm a big fan of self-evaluation, provided that the team leader is aware of how much more difficult or how much more harshly we judge ourselves. And then we've got some periodicity for call monitoring. We're pretty much familiar with a lot of this periodicity, so I'm not going to really speak about it in depth. But these are opportunities to showcase best performers. This is opportunities to improve group behaviors. You know, these are opportunities, and we want to take advantage of these opportunities so that call monitoring is not some hidden aspect tucked away in the corner that everybody hates. Now, when we start getting into call monitoring strategies, I think, and this is going back to that confidence issue, we want to encourage agents to practice both on and off the job. Put a mirror in front of your face and walk yourself through some of those difficult calls. Talk about best business practices, and maybe put a best business practice thing on people's desks so that they can take it home and practice some of these things. But we are looking for behaviors to improve those calls. And one of the last things that we absolutely want to do when we define the role of call monitoring, the purpose follows, and then strategy begins to unravel, all in the pursuit of excellence. When we go into call monitoring, a lot of the call monitoring that I have seen is always quantitative. It's always numbers. And then you have a supervisor sits down with an agent, and the agent gets all these scores, and they're like, what do they mean? But on the flip side, if all you have is qualitative, you're going to lose a lot of the managers in your call center because they just don't have the time to read all of the whys. So a blended approach in that data collection is a crucial opportunity that I would like to see happen more often. But we definitely, if you're just doing quantitative, we want to see that agent get key best practices based off of those scores that they can take back and actually put into practice and use. Then we get into some important points for call monitoring. You know, and I'll say it again, the best call monitoring can ever do is to enhance training. It never replaces quality control mechanisms. It never replaces a quality assurance strategy. It is simply a tool as an extension of those strategies and mechanisms. And it can't be stressed enough. Call monitors are not police. They're not the QA Secret Service. They should not be out there, you know, holding the stick of management. You know, if we can get away from that thought process, we're going to have much better call centers. Questions, comments, concerns?
Wonderful. Well, thanks very much for that, Dave. Some great points overall, and certainly I've taken away some key feedbacks from there. Call monitoring as a tool. It can either be a hammer that can either build or it can destroy. We've got to watch out for that we're getting aha moments and not gotchas. Quite a useful technique there of ghosting, with the ability to put call feedback live into the advisor's ear, so it can be particularly useful for training. Self-evaluation is very good, as long as the team leader is aware of how harshly we judge our calls. And we mustn't forget that tool monitoring is a tool to enhance training. And certainly, I think the comment we had earlier in the chat room about confidence, one of the key things is that training is one of the key things that can help drive confidence. Because if you're thoroughly trained, you'll naturally tend to be more confident in dealing with customers. And certainly, in this internet age, our customers often know you know, a great deal of detail about the organisation that our advisors may not necessarily know. Well, let's have a look at some tips coming into the chat room. Madison has said, allow your agents to access and use the QA evaluation form. When agents can practice evaluating their own interactions, they'll discover areas for improvement on their own. This will help them to get a better understanding of how the evaluation scoring works. I like that tip.
And can I add something there?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add something there. Madison is absolutely correct, especially if you can get the agent thinking about both the quantitative and qualitative side of that data. It helps to soften the blow, and it also helps to point that agent inward for a better outward experience.
And we've got a tip in from Laura, who says, involving team leaders in coaching sessions helps to deliver the message, break down the us and the them, and ensure changes are implemented going forward. I know there's a big debate about whether team leaders should be the coaches, whether they should be doing the quality evaluations, but certainly getting them involved is quite key. We've got an interesting question here by Grisella. It says, what do you consider being the magic number of monitored calls per agent per week? When is it too much? So I'm going to start on this on Dave, and then I'm going to ask Ed. So Dave, your thoughts?
Quite honestly, this is going to be driven by the individual agent, their individual net promoter scores or their quality scores, and it should be customized to that agent. If you've got a weak agent, absolutely, let's put in some extra call monitoring. Let's use some more third party and second party and peer-to-peer evaluations to help improve that agent. When is it too much? I would presume that you're going to see that when performance hits a peak and then begins to drop off. That's when they're in information overload, and that's gauged again agent to agent. I would never presume to put a solid number out there because every agent's going to be different. Everyone's education levels are going to be different. Their experience levels are going to be different, and their abilities in those calls are all going to be different.
Indeed. Ned, what's your thought?
Okay, it's too much when it affects your customers. Because I actually think you can't do enough coaching. You should be, your planners should be scheduling coaching into your agendas every single week, especially for team leaders. So yeah, I think you can never have too much coaching unless it's affecting your service levels. I think you should check 100% of calls. contacts, and I think you should, obviously, because I'm from NICE, I think you should use technology to enable that. And then it's about using a mix of evaluation techniques. We are very limited by this kind of linear way. So we either read down the chat or the email, or we have to listen to the voice call. And it's not very dynamic. So you have to do it to get context, to really understand behaviors, but you don't have to do 10 of those per month. Sometimes you slice it up like a sausage and you just focus on a particular behavior because there's the nuggets. And these are all things technology can help you do. So yeah, I just think as long as your customers are having good experience, do as much as you can.
Okay, Justina says, call monitoring allows us to identify not only soft skill growth opportunities, but also opportunities for gaps in job knowledge. This allows us to have a varied approach to coaching and to use sessions as topic knowledge, coaching rather than using that time to seem like we're focusing on call monitoring only. Matthew says, assess the alignment of your scorecard to agent expectations by having them listen to a call that has been scored by QA and then have them score the call. You'll be able to make sure the interpretation is correct and variances can then be targeted. I like that approach. It's a sort of has, if you like, ideas of calibration in it, but is involving the advisor in the process. And Michael says, evolve your QA strategy to focus on coaching agents on themes, using feature analytics, for example, rather than individual calls in isolation. There's another question. I can't quite find it in the deck. I saw it coming through earlier. I don't know if the team can pull it up. But the question was, how do you avoid quality monitoring being seen as a negative thing? How do you get advisors to buy into it? How do you avoid it being seen as, if you like, the gotcha rather than the aha? Dave, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Absolutely. One of the first and easiest strategies is to model the behaviors you want to see, and at the same time, you want to be enthusiastic about the opportunity to call monitor. Too often, because it's so manual, or it's manually driven, or it's mandated from on high, the next thing you know, everybody's got this negative opinion of call monitoring, and that spreads like a cancer on crack. I mean, it just overtakes everybody because that negativity just influences so much. So we want to be positive about call monitoring. We want it to be seen as that tool, and we want to be able to describe it as that tool, as an opportunity, not as a mandate, not as a requirement, but we really want to focus on, you know, what are we modeling so that we can then begin to see better behaviors in our agents.
Indeed. We've got also a tip in from, oh, sorry, we've done a tip from Michael. Here's a question from Mike. Any formulas about how much time to invest in call monitoring? Ed, and if you've got any thoughts?
Well, it depends really on how your business provides FTE to you. You know, I think I don't have a mathematical formula. I would say I would prioritize this as shrinkage, where your planning team is the first thing you should plan for. It often is the first thing that gets cancelled. It depends on the technology you have available. It's a very different answer if you have some technology to target it, like speech analytics, compared to if you're doing it manually. I would say one contact is enough. I've got a customer who did it with one contact, but it was the right contact. They distributed it to the team manager and the agent. They evaluated it both, and they used data to choose that contact. And then they had a rolling 3-month program. So it really wasn't about the volume. It was about the quality of the selection of the data. It was about the quality of the conversation, and it was about the quality of the follow-up actions. So it doesn't have to be a big commitment of time.
Indeed. Dave, any thoughts from yourself?
No, I'm really liking what Ed's putting out there, because it does come back to everything he's saying.
Okay, wonderful. Carlos says, have the rep tell you what went and what didn't go well on the call. Reps won't argue with themselves. They'll be more willing to improve or change. I particularly like this. This ties into the, if you like, the show not tell approach. I ask people to make suggestions. And Maria has said, find out from agents how they learn best, whether it's visual, auditory, or hands-on, or a combination of all three. So I guess which is just learning styles based across to that. Well, we're going to jump across now to a poll, and the poll question that we're going to ask is, what channels do you use in your contact center? So I'll just put this up on the screen. So do you use phone, email, chat, instant messaging, for instance, Messenger, WhatsApp, WeChat, or social media? So which channels do you use in your contact center? Just like to vote on that. Vote on that now. So and get the results coming through. Which channels do you do? Okay, we're just going to close that. So I'll just share the results. So looks like all of you, as I'd imagine, are using the phone. 84% are using email, 52% chat, 32% some form of instant messaging, and 39% social media. So certainly instant messaging seems to have jumped up. I'd like to follow up that now with a follow-up question, which is, which channels do you do quality monitoring on? So the same channels, so which ones do you do quality monitoring on? So just select all the ones that you're doing quality monitoring on of the different channels. So if you just like to put those up on the screen. Now, sample size on the last poll was 203. So I'm just going to share the results, and it looks like on the phone, yeah, pretty well everyone is doing call monitoring. Email has come down a bit. Chat is similar, but when it comes to instant messaging and social, that is probably about half the results overall. So, Dave, that surprises me.
It surprises me too, especially with the power of social media and how long it lasts in social media. If you have a bad experience in social media, your whole Facebook is going to know about it instantly. And then that's going to exponentially grow, and then that's going to exponentially grow. And to see social media that far down and instant messaging that far down, especially when the customer can copy and paste everything they just had with that agent and then put it right out onto social media, that really shocks me to see those that low.
And Ed, I guess that you may not be surprised so much on the social media as we, in the briefing, that was an area you'd identified, but the instant messaging is also, that's quite shocking. Is that just a lack of technology tools, or is that
it's a bit of both. It comes from digital transformation. We'd like to think there's a single program that's just driven digital transformation, and everyone knows the contact center is generally dealing with voice, maybe a bit of email, but marketing might have introduced social media and instant messaging, so it's generally being introduced by different departments and by, quite tactically. So I think that's one of the problems, is the way companies are changing themselves to react to customer expectations, to what an omni-channel experience, and the fact that they can move very quickly in new channels means they're not doing their due diligence, and they're not applying this fantastic methodology that Dave talked about to these channels. I think it's immensely risky. We did a survey of 370 ops directors and quality managers, and we found very similar trends. Everyone doing voice evaluation, about 2/3 in email and chat, and then 30% in the sort of instant messaging social media channels. I think it's a massive opportunity.
Yeah, so I think that's a key learning experience, particularly since, as Dave said, those digital transcripts can be around for ages. They can get into the hands of the press a lot more easy than phone recordings. So Ed, I think that's a good time to line you up, and if you'd like to, I know you've got a long checklist of areas that people need to be thinking about when it comes to call and quality monitoring.
Okay, have you got my screen? Can you see my slide?
We have indeed, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about technology, but actually I'm going to talk about the Egyptians to start with, because my classics degree has to come in useful sometimes, but there's a reason for the pyramid. So quality management is, as Dave and everyone on this call agrees, is the foundation to success. What I'm going to talk about today is just an enabler to make it easier. And when we ask the question to our customers, what are the most important technologies for competitive advantage? To be honest, I was surprised that quality management came out top. Because there's actually, when I visit customers all over the world, there's a lot of people who are doing it just kind of to stay compliant, I believe, and to produce the score. And if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think it's an interesting way to think about it. So Maslow created a model that looked at, humans' needs in 5 layers. And at the bottom was their physiological needs. So if you think of that for our contact centers, that's our building, our desks, our telephones and our computers. The next layer is about staying safe. And it's only when you get to the top of the pyramid, it's sort of called self-actualization, but what it really means is self-fulfillment. That is where it makes a difference, where we fulfill our potential. And what I see when I go into organizations to look at quality is people doing it because they have to do it. People doing it because of compliance and not connecting it to actually how you can really fulfill your potential. And those of you, and it sounds like the attendees today really get it, those of you who get it realize what a difference quality monitoring makes. So, and the reason being, just to keep the analogy going, is this. If any of you on this webinar feel like this, when you've got 373 contacts to evaluate and it's the 28th of the month and someone's screaming at you, well, you're not the only one. We've all been there. We need to remove these challenges of traditional quality management. And there's a range of them, I think. Let's start with sample size. Now, don't get me wrong. You can make a difference with one interaction, but it has to be the right interaction. And it's very hard with the technology we have today to choose the right interactions to make it easy to find them. And when you're dealing with such low sample sizes in the world of big data, where there's data everywhere and AI, organizations, when they look at quality management, think it's a bit old-fashioned when we're trying to make these big decisions based on small samples. So that's number one problem. Number two problem is, and I think the biggest one, is manual processes. Every time I go and visit a customer, I ask them to walk me through, start to finish, what their quality program is. And Excel is a very evil thing, I'm afraid to say. Excel is very convenient, it's everywhere, it's ubiquitous, but it means we build these very manual processes. So whether it's getting a list of interactions, maybe these are the sales, or these are the people we saved this month, and then you go into your call recorder and try and find that interaction. Or it might be, I'm going to allocate to these 20 evaluators, and you've got a nice little macro that in Excel that allocates them, and on, right through to reporting. And what that means is, as evaluators, as team managers, as quality managers, you're not focused on coaching, you're focused on admin. And I think we need to get rid of that. And I think the killer one is engagement. And this goes from the top level to the lowest level. So the top level, if I'm an executive, I'm a contact center director, and I've got this tough agenda, I've got to make sure customer satisfaction is high, costs are low, and we're selling in the right way. That's a tough agenda. And I've probably got to do all of that compliantly. I want to have a quality program that helps me do those things. So it's really challenging if you can't go and select the right interactions to connect your quality program for a senior level stakeholder. And then if Dave's talked a lot about this, when you're an agent and you just get judged on 1 or 2 interactions, and sometimes it's unfair, sometimes that really isn't typical of your behaviors, again, that's not going to motivate you. However, if you get interactions that are selected that really will help you do your job, it makes a huge difference. I'll tell you a true story. I went on some presentation training. You might send me a message privately to see if it's worked or not, but it was kind of scary because someone videoed me, and they said, give it your best presentation, and they videoed me, and then they let me watch it. And I was horrified in a good way, because I realized that what I thought was really good was actually pretty average. So I was so motivated to change that when I actually saw this video of what I thought I was being great, whereas in fact I was very tight, I wasn't really moving much. So yeah, I think people want to know how they can improve. I certainly do. And so feel free to message me personally with a presentation. They will be most welcome. Okay, let's talk about capabilities then. We have got to be able to do quality in one place, ultimately. The capabilities and the impact. Let's talk about it. Firstly, as I said earlier, you've got to be able to do it across every single interaction. And you can power that with a bunch of techniques I'm going to talk to you about today. And that means you can target your quality management based on what really matters. That can be the strategy of the organization, or it can be particularly the areas where the agent is struggling. So if you know, for example, you've got an agent who's struggling with knowledge, we've talked about this earlier, Dave talked about knowledge. You know, if you know from their desktop analytics, they're spending 30% of an interaction in the knowledge base, well, you're going to help that agent if you do quality monitoring targeted on that issue. So you need to be able to target. Now, secondly, it's pretty obvious. You want to automate these manual processes. That will allow you to have time to really be a strategic quality team rather than a manual quality team. And then finally, you want to engage everyone. You want to, I think self-assessment, you know, that's such a strong takeaway. Get your agent self-assessing. It's such a quick win and it really transforms. And get your quality data to your executives, making sure it's relevant to what matters to them. So we're going to drill down into these three areas quickly. When we talk about selection methodology, I see three scenarios. Most people are constrained by their technology and they have to do manual selection. You probably all know this. You go into your call recorder or your chat or your email and you go down a long list and you try and find something interesting to evaluate. Now, data, contact data or metadata can really make a difference. So in this case, you know, you may have, most of you are using some form of telephony system that will have the any time on hold, any transfers, the length of the interaction. That will give you a really good starting point. Let me give you an example. If you know from your Voice of the Customer program that customers are writing verbatims about transfers, then you can use that data and say, right, I'm going to do targeted quality every time the customer is transferred. And then you will transform your quality program with simple data. And then, as people have said in the chat room, analytics driven 100% quality is transformational. And that's using speech analytics, text analytics, desktop analytics to make a true difference. And so you can focus on sales behaviors, you can focus on expressions of dissatisfaction, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this is like the ecosystem that I see that needs to be changed. So firstly, over here in the left-hand box, you've got all your different capture devices. And I think this is why the data came back as low levels of evaluation across channels, because generally you've got them in different silos. A few of you will have an omni-channel, but I see most customers have a separate call recorder to the chat provider, to their email, and then you've got back office and all other sort of sources. Then you have your data. Typically, this is going to be locked away in this amazing data warehouse, which a bunch of hipster analysts turn into great insight every month. But you know what? You need it in your quality program, because if you can imagine, if you could have the NPS or the CSAT scores and then choose which calls to evaluate based on those, that simple data sharing really, really makes a difference to your quality program. Now, you need to pull those all into your quality platform. We have a platform that can do this called Quality Central, and that's really important, because what you don't want is to be tied to one channel. So doing your quality in a platform that only looks at calls or only looks at email. And once it's there, then you need to start to target all your different processes. So firstly, and I think most importantly, selecting and categorizing interactions. So that ability, whether it's speech and text analytics to actually search for phrases, or it's what's going on the desktop, or it's even, you know, the metadata about the interaction, makes a big difference. That means you can start to be dynamic and select the either low performing or high performing interactions that are going to make a difference. Then you want to be able to adapt your evaluation form. So you should have that link directly in your tool, so you can open it up and it is automated through the form, so it makes it easy to fill out. Now, I see a lot of people who've built their own evaluation forms, Excel, Microsoft Access, SharePoint. These are okay, but they make it hard for the evaluator to fill out a form. There's lots of ways that they can make mistakes, and yet these same evaluators are probably judged on their accuracy. So we're making it hard for evaluators. I think we need to make it easy. Then you've got to have the ability to automate those very, very important and very well managed workflows, but generally done in Excel or on a piece of paper. And these are things like calibration, appeals, audit, self-assessment. And a good quality platform should allow you to automate all of those out of the box. Reporting wise, it would be great, wouldn't it, if all those evaluation scores just populated a beautiful report and that all went automatically to everyone's desktops, no messing around in Excel. I was with a client last week. They've got one guy in their BI team who puts together this beautiful report. If they leave, what do you do? That's the danger of Excel. You need a reporting suite that's integrated, and finally a dashboard to push it back to the agent, the supervisors, the QAs, so they can see their results. 100% of their interactions, and it's based on the metrics that matter. Okay, so that's targeting. Let's talk about automation. I think in a nutshell, you want to automate every process that doesn't add value. There's too many human beings doing mundane, repetitive processes in contact centers. It's not helpful. If you can do all this automatically, then you can focus on the quality of the evaluation, the quality of the coaching. Did the coaching have impact? Is the self-assessment working? Calibration sessions, etc. It's also, so we can automate all these processes. Finally, we have engagement. And here's a couple of examples of dashboards. This dashboard here is what the dashboard in our system that we push through to a team manager or an agent. What it has your quality scores, but it also has these metrics. And these metrics are linked to business initiatives. In this case, I've got customer experience and I'm looking at complaints and escalations. I might be doing really well as an agent here, but I could look into costs and I might be doing a lot of transfers and have a lot of long interactions, or I might be really struggling with my sales techniques. This puts all the information in one dashboard. So that's great for team managers and agents. If you're a QA in an evaluation team, what you want to do is have your interactions pushed to you automatically and have different queues. So here I have a system where I can collaborate. I can all work off the same queue. But I also have different plans. So I've got omni-channel queues where I've got phone, chat, and email. I've also got targeted queues. This is targeted quality where this is an insurer that has high claims. So anything with high dollar claims, you can target your monitoring on that. This is using data to target your evaluations. Okay, so just to finish, I would recommend a self-assessment. What I'm going to share is the list, because it's complicated to automate a quality program, but this is a list that when I go and visit a customer, these are the things I'm looking for. So ask yourself these questions. How are your interactions captured? Is it a single platform or is it in multiple platforms? Straight away, you've got a manual process there that can be improved. Secondly, how do you find them? Do you have to click and listen and read interactions to find anything relevant? Or do you actually have data? Can you actually search them? Can you automatically select them? Again, that makes a big difference when you can automate it. Thirdly, workflows. Think about those processes you might currently have on paper, in Excel, and think about how you can automate those, because they make a big difference. So look at all your processes and how you distribute interactions. Then look at the evaluation form. Can you evaluate multiple layers of a journey? Typically, customers are using 6 different channels. So, can you look at just voice, or can you look at that whole journey? And can you use analytics? It's a big opportunity to be able to automate the process. Particularly in evaluation, we have something called auto answer. This is where you actually automatically answer those questions. Now, Dave made a point which I agree with completely. Scripts do not provide customer experience. However, some of you may be regulated salespeople, and there are still scripts you have to read out to remain regulated. And there's no point a human being checking if scripts exist. It's a great use case for interaction. You can automate that, automatically answer that in your form, and then your QA process can just check that. It makes a huge difference, and the regulators love it. Reporting, simple question. How are you creating it? Is it proper MI? Or are you just reporting it in a PowerPoint pack that really isn't looked at much, as long as the quality scores are trending in the right way? I see that a lot. Executives, just as long as they're trending okay, they don't pay attention. Also, the other thing I would recommend is get your quality data for a month and get the data on every question for every agent and start to do some correlations. Correlate it to your KPIs. Even correlate the questions together. I did one recently where I correlated 2 questions. One was the customer and agent in rapport, and the other one was the agent matching. Now, to me, that firstly says that quality form needs rewriting, because rapport and matching is the same thing, really. And what I found was they had a 3-point scale, and 27% of the contacts marked as in rapport were marked as the agent wasn't matching the customer, which is contradictory. So aggregate your data and have a really good look at it, because it's going to tell you a lot about your evaluation form. The final one is think about your dashboards. The quick win, self-assessment. pilot it, look at the results you're getting versus everyone else. I think you'll see an improvement in agent performance. And then look at coaching. Make sure your coaching is tightly connected to your evaluations, and measure the impact of coaching. Probably the single best thing I've seen deployed is people recording if a coaching event happens and then looking at quality performance after that event. And what you'll see is you'll get your feedback on, are we coaching properly? That is it.
Wonderful. Well, thanks very much for that, Ed. Some nice takeaways overall you've got there. Certainly quality needs to be all in one place. Self-assessment is such a quick win. I would entirely agree with that. You have the ability to use pinpointed quality. So, for instance, if call transfers are important, then you can do that. Yes?
Sharing the wrong screen.
Okay. So the call quality, you can certainly target call quality. And also, a very important point there, Ed, I think you made about, do you monitor coaching? We monitor people, but we're not overly monitoring the impact and the amount of coaching. So it's important to measure that. I certainly see a lot of contact centers where the team leaders, rather than coaching their teams, are spending a lot of their time doing email. It's a big problem. So certainly monitoring the coaching, I think, is a key metric that needs to be looked into. Well, let's have a look at some top tips and questions that are coming through. The first tip we have is from Paris, who says, assess the whole customer journey as well as just single agent interactions. That customer may have been around many different agents, not knowing how to assist them, and this needs to be evaluated too. So I think it's quite key. And Tabitha says, our team changed their name to Quality Support Specialist rather than QA. We also became visible to our associates, doing side-by-sides, going to team meetings and being involved instead of hiding behind the Iron Curtain. We also have our QSS, I'm not sure what that means, to take calls among the associates, that's the Quality Support Specialist, take calls among the associates 1 per week. Shows them we are in the weeds with them instead of Big Brother is watching. Dave, what's your thought on that tip?
I think this is fabulous. The name says it all. You are there for support, and you're a support specialist, which means you've been trained in how to train. But also, I recommend this for every single manager, team leader, director, etc., all the way up the chain. If you know what's happening on the front line because you spend time, at least 8 hours a month, taking real live calls from real live customers, you have a better connection to what it is you need to be looking at to measure. You have a better idea of the data that's going to be coming in, and you also have a connection to your customers. You're going to remember those customer experiences. And that is going to move better data back into those management meetings, those product meetings, those service meetings, and how to really drive that conversation. How do we improve customer service? So definitely, let's get them in the weeds. Let's get them answering right on the front of the call.
Stephanie says, engage your agents right from the start. We've asked our agents what their thoughts are on the importance of call monitoring. What are the benefits in their opinion? How can it help them? How is it aligned to the company vision and principles? And identifying the connection themselves is a great way of engaging people. I certainly think that's a great one. It's a question for you, Ed. What's the best way to approach an agent who does not want to listen to their monitor calls? Some agents may not like to hear themselves, which I guess is a bit like your video example, or may know, or they may have a lack of confidence, or even just embarrassed to have this pointed out. Any suggestions for overcoming that difficulty?
I would say self-assessment. I think there's a whole theme coming out in the latest research about adaptive WOS optimization. So this is wider than just quality management. It covers all the disciplines. And I would look at your whole population, team leaders and agents, and think, what is the coaching intervention that will make them perform best? So you might have people who would prefer to peer coach than actually be coached. So certainly when I was an agent, I was a bit of a pain to manage, to say the least. And I think it would have been better, rather than me being evaluated, to let me evaluate people or coach and peer coach. I think it's the right strategy. And in this case, I would have them on their own first before you discuss it together.
Excellent. We've got a tip from Laurie. Says, allow analysts to be the ones to deliver the quality training. Having this delivered initially by their peers can help embed expected behaviors without the feeling of being policed. I certainly think the idea of trainer and analysts can be quite good. We're certainly all used at school to having our trainers be the ones who mark our work. So I think that's a nice approach there. Griselda said, add motivating quotes with emphasis on empathy, politeness, and kindness throughout the call center will help create momentum. Aside from this, practice what you're preached. Dave, do you like motivating quotes on the walls?
I like anything that is going to help improve the customer interaction. I had the opportunity to work in a call center where we had TVs on the call center floor with scrolling, so you could read what they were talking about, and some of them were turned to sports, some of them were turned to news, but it brought a relaxed atmosphere to that particular call center as an opportunity to relax the call center agents. So whatever's going to work, definitely make it a holistic approach and definitely get everybody involved. You know, I'm not a big fan of seeing adult tricycles running around a call center. Having said that, though, I really liked having the ping pong table on the production floor in the call center, and this ability to have some things. So it's definitely not recommended for everybody, but find what works for you and make it holistic. Get your agents involved in finding ways to relax your call center.
Indeed, and I think you also got to be a bit careful not to live life by motivational quotes. I certainly for a while did one thing every day that scared me, not necessarily to be recommended. And the problem is if you live every day like it's last, you get an awful lot of washing up at the end of the week. Paris says, make sure you're analyzing the data produced by quality monitoring. Look at this based on individual, team to department, and coaching is a great tool for one-to-one or small groups. But if you find trending issues affected the wider area, you can start looking at the why and doing larger group training. And I guess there's a technology angle can certainly help with some of those patterns out.
Yeah, but I still think people could simply, after today, extract all their data into Excel, it's probably there already, and do a pivot table and just use a hypothesis-based approach and saying, what are these trends telling me? Do they make sense? Are the scales I'm using right? You know, something I see a lot is people using yes/no scales on, behavioral questions. You know, and I often say to customers, so what am I, 49% cold and now I'm 51% warm? You know, 49% amateur, 51% professional. You know, just be curious about your program, because I think you'll find interesting stuff. It's a great tip, by the way.
Wonderful. Lots of discussion about self-evaluation. Georgia asked an interesting point. When doing self-evaluation, do you previously provide the feedback and score to the agent, or do you leave them complete the score first and provide them your feedback and discuss about the eventuality changes made in the score? Dave, have you any thoughts on the right way to do self-assessment?
I would absolutely look back to what is that agent capable of? What is that experience of the agent? What is that education of the agent? But at the same time, myself and I tend to think that when they know the score first, then their self-evaluation becomes kind of like an appeal process where they can say, but I didn't see it that way at that particular time. Because remember, when we're doing recorded call monitoring and then coming back afterwards, everybody has got 20/20 hindsight, and that has to be part of this process. If we're not hearing and seeing it real time, we have got to understand the 20/20 hindsight and what that does to the scores.
Indeed. Well, we're running a little short on time, so Ed gave a few screenshots of the nice Quality Central system. So if you'd like to see a demonstration of the nice Quality Central system, if you'd just like to tick the yes box in the poll, yeah, there would be good. We'll jump across, and I'd like to ask they'd like to pick the winning tip. So let's have a look at what the winning tip is, and that comes in from Marco, who says, before providing your feedback in an evaluation, ask an agent to do a self-evaluation and then set a time to calibrate the findings. Group calibration is also a great tool to improve agent scores, compliant issues, and also customer satisfaction. So we'll be getting in touch with you, Marco, to arrange your prize. If in the chat room, if you can put in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about today's webinar? We'd like to do that. You can watch the replay and slides later on this afternoon. And I'd just like to finally thank our 2 speakers. Dave Salisbury, thank you for joining us for your first webinar.
My pleasure, Jonty. It's been awesome. Thank you.
And Ed, thank you for joining us as well.
Pleasure, as always.
And we're going to be back here next week where we're going to be looking at the best metrics to use in your contact center. Thank you and goodbye, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.